Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher and playwright of the 20th century, was said to have lived his words, speak his own actions in his story, and the story of the world ran parallel. In his seminal existentialist play No Exit, three people who cannot stand each other occupy a room they are forced into. Forced to spend eternity confined with others breeds in these people despondency, desperation, and disbelief that life could ever be better than the hell it is. One can easily say that Sartre is writing about the state of the American prison system. Ever since the first American prison was built in 1817, prison inmates were guided to make a positive contribution to society. Nearly 200 years later, the ideal of productive rehabilitation turned into a cheap labor-for-hire system, and prison labor was exploited for financial gain. Today, our nation faces a huge problem with recidivism, where ex-prisoners are headed down a path of committing more serious crimes and spending longer terms in state and federal prison facilities. According to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, in the year 2010, 1 in 100 Americans was imprisoned, and 70% of all ex-offenders returned to prison within 3 years of release. Our system has a problem. So what can be done about it? Today, we will first investigate the problems of our current prison system. Next, evaluate the benefits of educating our prisoners. And finally, legislate a solution to solve this reoccurring issue. Since the mid-1900s, the United States has been running its prison system according to crime control policies. Now, these policies involve enforcement actions by courts and correctional facilities. In theory, this sounds like an ideal approach towards reducing recidivism rates. But the reality is that most crime control policies result in greater spending in law enforcement and higher rates of incarceration. According to the Justice Policy Institute, incarceration rates sharply increased from 1980 to 2000 by 70%. The Institute blames this in part on crime control policies that only seem to emphasize arrest and confinement. Not surprisingly, the market for prison labor has attracted the attention of many stockholders and corporations. One New York investment firm says, in an advertisement for private prisons, while rates of convictions and arrests are steadily on the rise, profits are to be made from crime. This has left prisoners earning an average wage of nearly 20 cents an hour, if they are lucky to be paid. But of course, corporate America is quick to defend itself on the grounds that these prisoners are learning important job skills and a good work ethic. Unfortunately, with 20 cents an hour, it is anything but that. Prisoners are forced into labor-intensive trades, such as textile manufacturing, where they are then exploited for their cheap labor. It is no surprise that practical applications of these skills following their release are highly unlikely. Instead, prisoners find themselves leaving prison with few job skills and a bad prison record, which will certainly not attract any potential employers. Ultimately, this defeats the purpose of imprisonment. Is punishment all we strive to achieve, rather than ensuring that these prisoners are able to re-enter their communities and maintain a comfortable living? In this system, that's all that really seems to matter. However, there are many benefits that come from educating our prisoners, and this doesn't necessarily mean preparing them to pursue a PhD, but along the lines of allowing them to re-enter their communities with a plan for life. Literacy development and correctional education are the two paths towards decreasing our nation's recidivism rates through education. Audrey Bazos from the UCLA Department of Public Policy says that $1 million spent on correctional education can prevent up to 1,000 crimes. And the same amount of money spent on crime control policies can only prevent up to 300 crimes. Correctional education is more than 3 times as cost effective as crime control policies. So by getting some type of a certification, whether it be adult basic education, general education development, college coursework, vocational training, or apprenticeship training, suggests to potential employers that these ex-offenders are capable of completed work. With this said, our nation's ex-offender population will be able to re-enter their communities, support our labor force, and most importantly, re-establish their identities. So, the question is, if education has said to have been the leading way towards decreasing our nation's recidivism rates, why haven't these changes already been made? Simply put, most prisoners are believed to have no financial means, let alone any desire to pursue a further education. But this common misconception only exists because most prisoners have not been exposed to a secondary education in the first place. 18-year-old Jeremy Smith attended New York's Rikers Island Correctional Facility after being involved in gang activity and selling drugs. Smith says, "Education just wasn't fun for me. But seeing my friend across the street die was even worse. It made me realize that I had to do something with my life. Otherwise, I too would wind up the same way. Dead." After just 1 month in Rikers Island's facilities, Smith was able to work towards obtaining his GED. With the help of his educational counselors, he was able to create a path towards employment as well as educational opportunities. Currently, Smith is preparing his college applications in the hopes of pursuing a degree in political science in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is for these successes that I advocate that the United States federal government implement a legislation which distributes the money spent in the prison industry differently, such that current crime control policies, which are simply ineffective, are given less emphasis, and such that correctional education is given top priority. First, we must consider ceasing to use punishment as the only form of imprisonment. However, incapacitating the most serious offenders is another argument. Next, we must ensure that money spent in our prison industry is done so effectively and efficiently. Currently, our tax dollars are going towards funding these ineffective crime control policies, where all they do is punish. But instead, if our tax dollars can be redistributed, such that they can help fund literacy development and correctional education programs, our nation's illiteracy rates will dramatically decrease. With this said, our nation's ex-offending population will be able to make the very rational choices which will allow them to make better decisions in the first place. Finally, we must ensure that all correctional facility officers do their duties as correctional facility officers, not simply bodyguards who punish. If this means that extra training is required such that they can become certified teachers, then consider the money well invested. So looking back at Jean-Paul Sartre's play No Exit, he was right. Just like those 3 stuck in a room for eternity, prisoners without a basic level of education face the same fate. It is time that we recognize the power of education and its ability to lower crime through reducing recidivism rates. Imagine what a more skilled, more literate labor force would bring to our country. Imagine a society where ex-offenders were able to re-enter their communities, positively contributing in what they could do best. And imagine America, a country which will no longer be one to have the highest rates of imprisonment. You see, crime is inevitable. But preventing crime? Now that is in our hands. Thank you.